Ark of Covenant mystery deepens. Archaeologists uncover ancient ruins at biblical Shiloh that may have housed the sacred relic. A remarkable archaeological discovery at the ancient site of Shiloh in West Bank has reignited one of history's greatest religious mysteries, the fate of the Ark of the Covenant. Now we explore the truth, the mystery, and every detail of this story on our AI podcast.
If you were to just go dig a trench through the ancient city of Shiloh in the West Bank right now, you would unearth this completely bizarre mathematical anomaly.
Yeah, it really is wild.
Right, because buried in the dirt there, archaeologists have found 100,000 animal bones. Just this absolute mountain of remains from sheep, goats, and cattle.
And the strange part isn't even the volume, right? Because ancient cities had a lot of animals.
Exactly. The strange part is that a statistically massive percentage of these bones comes specifically from the right side of the animals.
It is a phenomenal data point. I mean, in a normal ancient city dump, the distribution of left and right bones would, naturally settle around 50-50.
Because nature is symmetrical.
Right. Nature is symmetrical. So finding a deliberate, concentrated skew toward the right side of an animal's body, especially over generations, it points to a highly regulated, systemic human intervention.
And uncovering the story behind that exact intervention is our mission for today's deep dive. So, welcome. If you are listening to this, you are someone with a deep curiosity for history's greatest mysteries, and we have a great one for you today.
We really do.
We're exploring this fascinating stack of archaeological reports and research from excavations led by Dr. Scott Stripling and the Associates for Biblical Research, or ABR.
Yeah, they've been doing some incredible work out there.
They have. We are tracking the physical footprint of basically the ultimate missing artifact. We were talking about the Ark of the Covenant and the ancient tabernacle that actually housed it.
And the historical stakes of these excavations are just immense. I mean, we are talking about archaeology's literal holy grail here.
Oh, for sure.
According to ancient texts, the Ark was this wooden chest, right, overlaid with gold, constructed around 1445 BC, specifically to hold the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments.
Right, the ultimate sacred object.
Exactly. But it completely vanished from the historical record long before the Babylonian destruction of Jerusalem in 586 BC. So what this research explores is the really tantalizing possibility that archaeologists have finally mapped the exact piece of earth where that golden chest originally rested.
Which is huge. But, before you can hunt for a missing object, you have to meticulously reconstruct the environment that contained it.
Right. We have to look at the room it was in.
Exactly. So we have to look at Shiloh itself, because for anyone reading ancient Near Eastern history, Jerusalem usually takes up all the oxygen. But Shiloh came first.
It really did. It was the original hub.
Yeah, located about 19 miles north of Jerusalem, up in the hill country. And it served as the very first religious and political capital of Israel for over 300 years.
And 3 centuries of continuous operation as a capital is a staggering timeline. I mean, according to the Old Testament, after the Israelites entered Canaan, Joshua established the portable sanctuary there.
The Tabernacle.
Right, the Tabernacle, at this specific location. Shiloh served as the administrative hub where the Promised Land was formally divided up among the 12 tribes.
Which makes it a massive bureaucratic center, too.
Oh, absolutely. It was the seat of governance for the high priest Eli, and it was the training ground for the prophet Samuel. So it wasn't just some temporary encampment, it was the undisputed epicenter of faith and politics for an entire civilization.
Which brings us to the recent breakthrough that has the whole archaeological community on alert right now. Dr. Stripling's team unearthed the southern wall of a monumental building at Tel Shiloh.
And finding that specific boundary line was the key.
Yeah, because finding that wall let them map the entire structure, right? They can now reconstruct the complete footprint of this massive ancient building.
And that footprint provides the physical parameters we actually need to test the historical claims. I mean, a southern wall anchors the dimensions, which allows us to overlay the ancient biblical blueprints onto the actual dirt.
Okay, let's unpack this, because a massive foundation doesn't automatically equal a legendary sacred sanctuary.
Sure, yeah.
Right. Ancient societies built massive structures constantly for entirely secular reasons. I mean, an agricultural hub would need a colossal warehouse. for storing regional grain.
Or a political capital would need an expansive administrative center for taxation and military logistics.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So a large floor plan alone isn't really enough to just slap a biblical label on a site.
Well, this raises an important question, and it is the exact barrier to entry for serious archaeology. You need compounding variables to move from just speculation to a working hypothesis.
Right, you need more data.
Yes. And the newly uncovered structure provides that first major variable, which is its orientation. The building is aligned strictly east to west. And in the ancient Near East, architectural orientation was heavily dictated by cosmology and theology. It was never just convenience.
Right, because facing the east, facing the sunrise was often tied to the concept of the divine source or the original location of Eden.
Exactly. That alignment represents a deliberate, resource-heavy architectural choice to mirror their theological worldview. And the biblical text explicitly mandates that the tabernacle be oriented east to west.
Which is a huge point in its favor.
It is. Furthermore, the overall proportions and dimensions of this newly mapped structure perfectly match the textual descriptions of the sanctuary.
Wow.
Yeah, Dr. Stripling is careful to note that a matching footprint isn't absolute proof. But you suddenly have this monumental building in the correct city from the correct era, oriented to the correct theological cardinal points, built to the exact dimensional ratios of the tabernacle.
That is wild. It's kind of the equivalent of finding a concrete foundation in modern times that possesses the exact dimensions, shape, and base paths of a Major League Baseball diamond.
Huh. Yeah, that's a great way to look at it.
Right. You might not have found the bats and gloves yet, but the geometry alone heavily suggests you aren't standing in a ruined shopping mall.
Exactly. That geometric match forces us to look closer at the site's function. And architecture only dictates the space, right? Human activity dictates the actual purpose.
So you have to look at the trash.
Yes. To verify what happened inside those walls, you really have to examine the physical refuse left behind by the daily operations.
And the artifacts the ABR team pulled out of the dirt surrounding this structure paint a very specific picture. They didn't uncover, standard domestic pottery or agricultural silos. They found stone altar horns.
Which is a massive clue.
Yeah. In ancient Israelite worship, altars featured these really prominent horn-like structures on their four corners.
And those horns were deeply symbolic. In ancient Near Eastern cultures, the horn represented strength and power and divine refuge. Grasping the horns of the altar was a recognized plea for sanctuary or mercy.
The team also found ceramic pomegranates, which served as a major decorative motif in Israelite temple architecture, symbolizing abundance and fertility. But the discovery that really anchors the function of the site is the Murex shells.
Oh, the economic implications of those shells are just staggering.
They really are. So Murex shells are marine snails. And in the ancient world, the extraction process was notoriously brutal and labor-intensive.
Oh, it was awful.
Yeah, you had to harvest thousands of these snails, crush them, and extract this tiny specific gland just to produce a few drops of a highly coveted blue-purple dye. And the biblical texts explicitly demand this exact dye for the garments of the high priests.
Which means someone was funding an incredibly expensive, highly specialized supply chain. Shiloh is a landlocked, mountainous region.
Right, there's no ocean there.
No, Murex shells are harvested on the Mediterranean coast. So transporting the raw materials or the extracted dye itself deep inland to this specific facility required massive logistical effort and wealth.
It's not something you do by accident.
Not at all. You do not commit that level of state resources for a rural grain silo. You do it to outfit the highest echelon of your religious hierarchy.
Finding the byproduct of that dye at this site is like digging through the unrecognizable ruins of a modern building and finding shredded surgical scrubs in the pieces of a stethoscope.
Right.
The walls might be gone, but the highly specialized trash is a dead giveaway that you're standing in a hospital. The shells verify the presence of an elite, well-funded priesthood.
Which leads us directly to the biological evidence. Because if you have an elite priesthood operating a national sanctuary, you should see the physical aftermath of their daily rituals.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, because we need to talk about that massive bone pile we mentioned earlier.
Yes, the anomaly.
Yeah. Previous excavations at Shiloh yielded 100,000 animal bones from sheep, goats, and cattle. Now, in a bustling ancient capital, a high volume of animal bones is expected. People have to eat.
Sure, it's a big city.
But that mathematical skew toward the right side of the animal's body is the anomaly that absolutely demands an explanation.
Well, what's fascinating here is how this specific biological data perfectly validates the ancient literature. Because Leviticus chapter 7 outlines the highly rigid protocols for animal sacrifice.
Right.
The text explicitly mandates that the right thigh and the right shoulder of the sacrificial animal belong strictly to the officiating priests.
Because in most ancient cultures, the right hand or the right side represented strength, authority, and honor. Reserving the right portion for the priests was a way of granting them the prime cut of the offering.
Exactly. And the worshippers or the altar fire consumed the rest.
So the presence of 100,000 bones mathematically skewed to the right side proves that these specific Levitical laws weren't just abstract ideas written in a book, right?
No, they were the daily systemic reality. For generations, the priests were taking their assigned portions, consuming the meat, and discarding the bones in a concentrated area.
It's incredible.
It really is. The statistics eliminate the possibility of this just being a random municipal meat market. It is the undeniable physical footprint of the biblical sacrificial system in full swing.
You are literally looking at the ancient garbage of the Israelite priesthood. It is incredible to synthesize all of this. I mean, we have the foundational blueprint matching the biblical dimensions.
Right.
We have the east-west cosmological alignment, the stone altar horns, the murex shells providing the luxury supply chain for priestly garments, and the mathematical certainty of the right-sided bones.
It really paints a complete picture.
It does. Shiloh was a highly organized, heavily defended religious and economic powerhouse.
It was a fortress of faith and administration, operating at the absolute peak of its cultural influence.
Which makes its sudden and catastrophic collapse so jarring. Because a complex society operating at that level of organization doesn't just evaporate.
No, it was systematically dismantled. And the catalyst for that destruction actually stems from a disastrous psychological miscalculation during a military conflict.
Right. The historical narrative in 1 Samuel chapter 4 details this specific turning point. The Israelites find themselves locked in this brutal existential war with the Philistines. And the campaign is failing. Casualties are mounting.
It was getting really desperate.
Yeah, and in an act of total desperation, the leadership at Shiloh makes a fatal decision. They remove the Ark of the Covenant from the Tabernacle and march it directly onto the front lines of the battlefield.
And that decision really exposes the cognitive framework of the ancient Near Eastern mind. Because in their worldview, a deity's presence was often viewed as physically tethered to their most sacred relic.
Like a good luck charm.
Essentially, yeah. By rolling the ark onto the battlefield, the Israelites were attempting to force God's hand. They treated the relic as a tactical weapon of mass destruction.
Wow.
The underlying logic was simple. The divine will not allow its own physical footstool to be captured by a foreign army. Therefore, divine intervention is guaranteed. Therefore, victory is assured.
But the strategy completely backfires. The resulting battle is a slaughter. The Philistines don't just rout the Israelite army, they capture the Ark of the Covenant as a spoil of war.
Which is just unthinkable for them.
Completely. The ultimate religious relic is lost. And during the chaos, the two sons of the high priest Eli, Hophni, and Phinehas, who were tasked with guarding the Ark, they're both killed.
It is a moment of profound cognitive dissonance for the ancient Israelites. I mean, the unbreakable rules of their theology were seemingly shattered in a single afternoon. The Ark, the literal center of their universe, is gone.
And that national trauma funnels down into a very intimate, tragic scene back at Shiloh. The elderly high priest Eli is waiting for news of the battle, and the text describes him sitting on a seat by the side of the road near the city gate.
Just waiting.
Right. A runner arrives from the battlefield, clothes torn, and delivers the casualty report. The army has fled, your two sons are dead, and the Ark is captured. And upon hearing the Ark was taken, Eli falls backward from his seat by the gate, breaks his neck, and dies.
And it's a highly specific geographic detail, right? The gate of the city. And this is where Dr. Stripling's archaeological team bridges the gap between literature and the physical earth.
What did they find?
Well, during recent excavations, they didn't just map the monumental building. They also uncovered Shiloh's northern defensive system. What they unearthed is a sophisticated bent-axis gate complex.
A bent-axis gate is a marvel of ancient military engineering. Instead of a direct, straight-line entrance, where an attacking army can easily gain momentum with a battering ram, a bent-axis design forces anyone entering to pass through an outer door into an interior courtyard or chamber.
Right.
Then they physically have to turn a sharp corner, usually 90 degrees, to pass through the next set of doors into the city.
It entirely neutralizes the momentum of a siege. I mean, you cannot maneuver a heavy battering ram around a sharp 90-degree corner while under defensive fire.
No, it creates a total choke point.
Exactly. But these gate complexes served a dual purpose. In peacetime, the chambers inside these thick walls functioned as the civic and administrative nerve center of the ancient city.
Because they provided shade and security. It was the natural place for judges to hear disputes, merchants to negotiate contracts, and city elders to await news from travelers or runners arriving from the main roads.
And that aligns perfectly with the textual description of Eli waiting at the gate. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the unearthing of this bent-axis gate complex isn't just about ancient architecture. It provides a tangible, physical stage for this historical tragedy. Yeah, the archaeology allows us to point to the stone foundations of the civic chambers and recognize that this is likely the exact patch of earth where a grieving father received news of a shattered nation and fell to his death.
So what does this all mean? It turns a two-dimensional story into a three-dimensional, mappable reality. I mean, the physical world is validating the historical account with stunning precision.
It grounds the narrative in reality, yes, but it also reveals that the Israelites were just one chapter in a much longer story, because the soil at Shiloh is deeply stratified.
What else is down there?
Well, beneath the Israelite ruins and the remnants of the Tabernacle footprint, archaeologists uncovered evidence of an even earlier civilization. They found 3 enormous Canaanite storage jars dating to the period before the Israelites ever arrived in the region.
And finding intact organic material inside those jars completely changes the timeline potential. Because they weren't empty, right? They contained the charred remains of olives, wheat, and lentils.
Which is amazing because organic remains are the holy grail for absolute dating. Archaeologists often have to rely on relative dating, comparing the style of pottery rims to establish a rough chronological sequence.
Which is pretty subjective.
It can be, but burnt lentils and wheat can be subjected to radiocarbon dating. Because the organic material was charred in whatever fire destroyed that earlier settlement, the carbon clock was essentially stopped at the exact moment of destruction.
So testing those burnt food remains allows scientists to pinpoint the precise decade that the earlier Canaanite city fell, which provides a rigorous chronological anchor for when the site transitioned into the Israelite religious center. It really highlights the strategic and geographic value of this location. Different empires and civilizations fought over this specific hill country real estate for centuries.
The continuous occupation of the site really emphasizes that the religious significance of Shiloh didn't occur in a vacuum. It was built on layers of geopolitical history.
So for you listening right now, why does all of this matter? Why spend a deep dive analyzing ancient foundations and marine snail shells in the West Bank?
It's a valid question.
Right. And the core truth is that the Ark of the Covenant remains missing. There is no golden chest sitting under a spotlight in a museum vault today. And the researchers involved maintain a strict scientific rigor. They are careful not to definitively declare that this newly mapped building is unequivocally the Tabernacle.
Right, they have to be careful.
But look at the compounding variables we just unpacked. You have a massive structure matching the exact dimensional ratios detailed in the ancient blueprints.
Yep.
You have the precise east-west theological orientation. You have the Murex shells, proving the presence of an elite, exorbitantly funded priesthood.
The shells are such a huge deal.
And you have a statistically verified anomaly of right-sided animal bones that perfectly mirrors the specific sacrificial laws of Leviticus, not to mention the defensive bent-axis gate complex matching the exact civic setting of the priesthood's tragic downfall.
It's a lot of evidence.
It makes Shiloh one of the most compelling archaeological sites in the world today. It takes ancient, abstract texts and transforms them into a touchable reality.
It completely bridges the gap between literature and the physical world. I mean, we live in a modern era that is often quick to categorize ancient texts as purely allegorical or as neat moral myths constructed by primitive cultures.
Right, we dismiss them.
We do. But at Shiloh, we have an over 3,000-year-old description of a sanctuary, complete with bizarrely specific rituals regarding the societal hierarchy of who consumes which side of a sheep.
Yeah.
And thousands of years later, we dig into the dirt, and the exact mathematically verified leftovers of those specific rituals are sitting right there in the soil, matching the ancient text perfectly.
The precision of the physical evidence forces a total reevaluation of how we read those historical accounts.
It demands a reevaluation because if a highly specific historical account like the Tabernacle at Shiloh, which many scholars have dismissed or minimized over the centuries, if that can be unearthed and validated with this level of biological and architectural precision, what other legendary historical accounts currently dismissed by the modern world as pure myth might just be waiting a few feet underground for the right person to start digging?
Oh man, that is a lingering thought that entirely changes how you view history. Maybe we just need to keep digging.
Yeah.
Well, until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Okay, one question for you. Do you think archaeologists have finally discovered the original location where the Ark of the Covenant was kept? Or is this another fascinating clue that still falls short of proving one of history's greatest biblical mysteries? Don't forget to comment it. Thanks.